Thanks for joining us. This is Omni View episode 79, Balanced News Perspectives. Today is June 12th, 2026. Let's look at the day's news from every angle. A potential US-Iran peace deal could reopen the Strait of Hormuz and ease global oil pressures if finalized in coming days. President Trump stated that strikes on Iran have been canceled because talks have resumed and a settlement appears close. Iranian officials responded that no final agreement has been reached. Reports indicate the proposed deal would reopen the Strait of Hormuz and lift certain oil sanctions. U.S. officials emphasized that renewed diplomacy offers the quickest path to de-escalation and economic stability for energy markets. Iranian state media stressed that any accord must address core security concerns before commitments are finalized. Trump administration negotiators argue that pausing military action preserves leverage for a broader settlement covering Lebanon and other fronts while avoiding unnecessary escalation costs. Iranian officials counter that sanctions relief must be irreversible and tied to verifiable steps on both sides, noting past withdrawals from agreements left them exposed. How might verification mechanisms in any deal address past compliance disputes? Shifting now to the markets, SpaceX raised $75 billion in its initial public offering, the largest in history. Shadow market trading indicates shares could open significantly higher. Company president Gwynne Shotwell addressed investor questions ahead of the NASDAQ listing. Institutional investors contend the offering price reflects proven launch cadence and government contracts that provide predictable revenue streams. Skeptics within the investment community point out that heavy reliance on a single founder's vision introduces governance risks not fully priced in. What disclosure requirements will apply to SpaceX after listing? The Common European Asylum System began implementation on Friday. Germany's interior minister stated the changes aim to lower new arrivals. Experts have noted that full results may take time to materialize. Interior Ministry representatives maintain that standardized processing and faster returns will reduce pressure on national systems while preserving access to asylum. Advocacy groups counter that accelerated procedures risk overlooking individual circumstances and may shift burdens to frontline states. How will appeals processes change under the new rules? Chinese authorities arrested Min Xin, a U.S.-based scholar focused on Myanmar and Chinese foreign policy, at a conference. Officials cited activities endangering national security. The detention follows a recent Trump visit to Beijing. Chinese security officials argue that foreign researchers sometimes cross into prohibited areas and that enforcement protects core sovereignty interests. U.S. academic institutions respond that transparent legal processes and access to counsel are essential to maintain trust in international research collaboration. What consular access has been provided to the detained scholar? A major foreign intelligence collection program is set to lapse at midnight without legislative extension. Lawmakers have not reached agreement on a short-term renewal amid disputes over leadership appointments. National security officials maintain that uninterrupted access to overseas communications remains essential for tracking threats that do not respect borders. Privacy advocates argue that periodic reauthorization forces necessary debate on scope and safeguards. What fallback authorities exist if the program expires? The national rally leader was photographed at the Monaco Grand Prix with his partner, Princess Maria Carolina of Bourbon-Two Sicilies. The images mark their first joint public appearance and have drawn commentary about image consistency. Supporters view the event as a private matter unrelated to policy positions. Critics within and outside the party question whether the setting aligns with the movement's working class messaging. French media outlets have highlighted the contrast in coverage. Party strategists argue that personal relationships should remain separate from political branding. Commentators concerned about authenticity maintain that high-profile social settings can undermine claims of representing ordinary citizens. Viktor Orban's successor has pledged to address anti-Ziganism. Observers are assessing whether policy changes will produce measurable improvements in daily conditions for Roma residents. Government statements emphasize equal treatment and practical integration measures. Roma advocacy groups call for concrete programs beyond rhetoric. Local analysts note that historical patterns of marginalization will require sustained effort across multiple administrations. Officials highlight commitments to reduce discrimination in employment and education as foundational steps. Community representatives stress that enforcement mechanisms and funding levels will determine whether outcomes shift. Indian financial institutions are seeking more than $50 billion in new deposits from overseas nationals. The effort aims to strengthen foreign exchange reserves and support the rupee. Policymakers describe the drive as a return to proven funding sources after more than a decade. Bank executives note competitive rates and security features as key selling points. Currency analysts watch whether inflows materialize at the targeted scale. Reserve managers argue that diaspora deposits provide stable, non-debt creating foreign currency without the volatility of portfolio flows. Skeptics caution that past campaigns succeeded only when accompanied by credible macroeconomic stability. Hundreds of tickets remain unsold for England's opening match despite high listed prices. Earlier games in the tournament have shown empty seats in some venues. Organizers maintain overall interest remains strong across the tournament. Ticket sellers note that premium pricing can limit attendance even when broader demand exists. Local observers point to travel costs and scheduling as additional factors. FIFA representatives cite advanced sales data as evidence of sustained global interest. Market analysts suggest that dynamic pricing adjustments may be needed to fill seats without undermining perceived value. The musician's signature looping device allows one-person layering of live performances. Reviewers note it meets core functional claims while identifying usability quirks at the price point. Musicians testing the unit highlight its workflow advantages for solo acts. Technical reviewers flag learning curve issues and cost relative to simpler alternatives. Retailers report steady pre-orders from established users. Product designers emphasize integration with existing performance habits as a primary value proposition. Users comparing options argue that simpler, lower-cost pedals achieve similar results for many players. Viewers questioned elements of the singer's appearance and movements during the ceremony. Social media posts suggested the possibility of a stand-in performer. Official production accounts have not addressed the claims. Fans defending the performance cite normal variations in lighting and choreography. Others continue to circulate visual comparisons. Production teams maintain that live events routinely involve technical adjustments that can appear unusual on camera. Online commentators argue that visible inconsistencies warrant clarification to maintain audience trust. The former model indicated openness to marrying again while addressing her husband's legal situation and her own health plans. She also commented on her social circle. Tabloid coverage frames the remarks as consistent with her public persona. Some readers express fatigue with recurring personal updates. Others view the statements as candid reflections on life events. Supporters argue that public figures in long-term media relationships have little choice but to address personal developments directly. Critics contend that repeated focus on private matters can overshadow other aspects of a person's public record. Now, to really understand this story about the potential US-Iran deal, most coverage of sudden announcements like this skips the long preparatory work that occurs outside public view. Back-channel communications typically run through third-country embassies, intelligence contacts, or trusted intermediaries who can test positions without formal commitments. These lines allow each side to gauge whether core demands are negotiable before leaders risk political capital on open talks. When an announcement appears abrupt, it usually reflects months of quiet iteration rather than a spontaneous breakthrough. Knowing this, listeners can assess whether a reported imminent deal rests on verifiable progress or simply on one side's desire to shape expectations. Next time you see headlines about rapid diplomatic movement, ask which third parties are positioned to facilitate messages, what past agreements provide the template, and which domestic constituencies must be managed on each side before signatures occur. Tomorrow, watch for updates on whether European governments confirm a venue for any signing ceremony. That's Omni View. For full source links and more context, check out today's written briefing on the Omni View Summaries page. As always, compare outlets, look for primary documents, and separate what's known from what's assumed. If balanced perspectives are valuable to you, share this with a friend and subscribe wherever you listen. See you tomorrow. And before you go, this show is part of the NARA Network, a family of daily podcasts covering tech, science, markets, and more. If you enjoyed today's episode, give Models and Agents a listen, your daily briefing on AI models and agents. You can explore the whole lineup at naranetwork.com. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.